Well, an expected announcement today that Georgia and Florida will play one another at 3:30 on CBS in October. That game is always a big deal. Don't get me wrong, and we're seeing its value. That was the big announcement today. It's expected, but it doesn't mean it's not a big announcement. In the future, this game might not be at 3:30. It could be a night game. It certainly will not be on CBS because CBS doesn't have the contract in the future. But Georgia, Florida, getting ready for another tussle near the St. John's down there. This game is such a monumental game. It's such a big game, and that CBS consistently through the last 25 years, 25 seasons, has said this is the game that we're going to broadcast. We're going to pick this game up no matter what. We're not letting ESPN get a hold of it. That tells you just how big a deal that Georgia Florida is. And you got to keep in mind during all of the way this works during the contracts for ESPN and CBS is that CBS gets to protect like a couple of games, and they get to choose every single year the 8 o'clock primetime game. And sometimes they announce that ahead of time. But we've always seen them announce Georgia, Florida. And the only time they did not was 2002, which turned out to be a pretty important Georgia, Florida. The Gators came down to Jackson or went over to Jacksonville and upset Georgia, an undefeated Georgia. This was during the teeth of the Georgia can't beat Florida thing, and that was a brutal loss for the Dogs in Jacksonville. It prevented them from winning, from playing for the national championship. It remains to be seen that they would have played for the national championship that year. We're in very different times now, where if you won the SEC, you certainly will play for the national championship. It wasn't like that in 2002, but that game being at night had consequences, and there was a lot of stuff that folks didn't like about that game being a night game. Keep in mind that Georgia Florida's traditional home has been about 1 o'clock. That was what it was forever. I mean, they purposely did not play that as a night game. And then '02, when ESPN got a hold of it, they wanted it to be a night game, and they did. And I think the post game was just not what anybody wanted to see. That's 20 years ago now. So I think that the notion that when Disney gets a hold of this game for good, that it won't return tonight. I mean, you're being naive. I mean, they're going to want the biggest bang for their buck for that game. When ABC had this game, they put it on. Uh, they broadcast this game to the whole country at a time when that was not necessarily common. So now ABC, Disney, ESPN, they're going to have control of the game again, and what that will mean for the time of the game, I think, is something that I follow that closely and watch it very well. The reason why it's such a big deal game, you got 6 million people watched Georgia, Florida last year, and Florida was not good. 6 million people. That's a huge audience in college football. It easily won the week, and you know, I have gotten used to in my life watching Georgia, Florida start at 3:30 and watch the shadows creep in, and you get those long shadows of the fall. Um, and because you see this picture from DAWGSTRUCTION with Kirby, where you get the twilight by mid part of the fourth quarter, and there is some romanticism about it. It's a here's the dogs partying with the student section. Pick up DAWGSTRUCTION. There's a link below. Um, but that game, if it were to go tonight, which I think it will at some point. Now I don't know if it will go tonight forever. Um, that you better be ready then, because that's going to be a mess. And there's a lot of drinking at that game. There's a lot of partying at that game. South Georgia fans feel like this is their home game. Uh, it will be a different atmosphere. And um, I just I wonder in the future what Georgia Florida will be like when it's not controlled by CBS. CBS this is why is this game such a big deal? Because so many people watch it. And why did Disney want the SEC contract? Because uh, of Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, LSU, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia. They want the big games. They want Texas A&M, Alabama. They want LSU, Auburn. These are all games. They want Georgia, LSU. They want Georgia, Alabama. They want those games more often. They want Georgia, South Carolina. They're not paying for Kentucky, Mississippi State. They're getting it, but they're not paying for it. They're paying top dollar for these games. And it speaks to the brand that is, the league, and specifically the brand of this game with two iconic programs. When you see the Georgia helmet, you know immediately it's Georgia. When you see the Gators helmet, you know immediately it's Gators. They spell it out for you, literally. We are fortunate in this part of the world to have a rivalry that's that important, to have a venue that is that um, unique. Although I am not in love with the venue, I am not in love with Jacksonville. I recognize how important it has been for what Georgia is, for what the Gators are. It's an important moment every season in college football. Georgia, Florida, in Jacksonville, it is just natural. It's just like Texas, Oklahoma, and Dallas. And, you know, it is one of the few games that you just get used to. And we used to be able to be used to Georgia Auburn. It was a sweater game. That's not the case anymore. That's changed. And you can still get used to Tech Georgia, but that game's not super competitive anymore, or at least it hasn't been this century. So it's it is one of the things that if you're Georgia and the Gators, I don't think you want this game to go the way of Oklahoma, Nebraska. I don't think you want this game to change in any significant way like we've seen with so many other games. I think you want it to stay as close as possible to what it's always been. Because once you change what you've always been, are you what you are? And I don't know. Sometimes change is really good. I think in this case, if you start talking about playing this game at night, which is going to happen, will that take away from Georgia, Florida? If you were to move the game to the campuses, that will totally and fundamentally change this game forever. Uh, I cannot like Jacksonville and not want the game to move. It can be both at the same time, and I've evolved on this issue. I do not think it should move. I don't see why it would move. Both teams in the last 15 years have won the national championship. I mean, the game is not preventing a national championship from emerging from the game. In some ways, it helps with that. So you are going to see a new future. The question becomes, what will that look like in the future? But now we know, as almost is always like clockwork, that the Dogs and Gators will kick off probably about 3:47 on the banks of the St. John's, and we'll be there to tell you all about it. Dogpost.com. Thanks for watching.